Well, hello everyone. This is podcast number 11 for the podcast series Front Office Success, and I'm your host Naveen Samuel. Today we have a special guest with us. We have Dino all the way from Utah, and he is also known as the relationship expert, and he's the author of the Practice RX. Do you go by Practice RX or Practice Prescription?
People say it both ways. But I do Practice RX, just shorter.
Practice RX, okay, which is it's also a number one international bestseller. So welcome to the program today, Dino.
Thank you for having me, Naveen. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, so we were just talking about the 4th of July weekend and lots of fun activities and
crazy last minute stuff to do. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like sometimes you need a vacation away from your vacation.
Every time I go on vacation, I feel that way. I mean, I'm blessed enough that I live. My business is really kind of created around my lifestyle, which is really great. Like I've really worked hard to make sure that I created a situation where I can take off when I need to take off, and I'm very flexible in my schedule.
That's great.
Because I work certain times. Like tomorrow, I leave to Georgia for a client. I'll be there for 3 days, and then I'm back, and I'm home for a week, and I can kind of do whatever I want. So that's nice, but it's also one of those things that I have found that when I go on vacation, I was in Brazil a month and a half ago, and I got back and I was like, man, I need a week to recover from
recovery. Yeah. Well, let's get started here. Tell us a little bit about your background, like before you got started becoming a speaker and author.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is I've really been speaking my whole life. I'm a third child. Like I'm right in the middle. So I've always had to like be the guy who's speaking up and, making sure people hear me, because my 2 older brothers would run right over me, and my little sister was the baby, so she got all the attention. So I'm the weird one in the family. I was a actor and a performer and a dancer growing up, and always had aspirations to do something creative, whereas no one else in my family was that way at all. And my family kind of looked at me like, what is doing? And I was always in everybody's business. I was always trying to stick my nose in adult conversations and stuff. And I just kind of found a knack for helping people see things a little differently. And I didn't realize till later on in my life why that was. And that's because I found out when we were doing some testing with my son that I have a mild set of a form of dyslexia. And so reading and writing and all that stuff was always frustrating for me. I'm a terrible speller. I'm the world's worst speller. And on Word, where the red line will pop up if you spell something wrong. And
exactly.
If you click on it, it will give you suggestions.
Sure.
Most of the time, it doesn't give me a suggestion. It has no idea what I'm trying to spell. That's how bad it is. But I had to overcompensate for that, like a lot of dyslexics do, and I found this out later on, by being more creative, by finding new ways to look at things and understand things. And so I would have friends in high school who would always come up to me and ask me like relationship advice and personal advice with their parents. And I was always just that guy who always gave advice. And when I was 8 years old, my parents divorced. And I remember even as an 8-year-old being like, I could help your marriage. Like if you would just listen to me, I would tell you what to do. But of course I was 8 and nobody listened to me. So as I got later on in life, the thing is I never wanted to be a counselor or therapist because of my experience with my parents' divorce and going through counseling and therapy. I really didn't like it. I had a really bad taste in my mouth about it. And I thought you had to do that in order to help people out with their relationships. And I found out later on in my life that that's not necessarily true, that people, as long as it's good, solid advice and helps people get to the resolve that they want, that people are willing to hire you to do that.
Sure.
So I started off in the relationship space of marriages and very quickly started to help higher end entrepreneurs, speakers, doctors, chiropractors, financial people, because they seemed to be really, really good at their business side of things. But when it came to their relationship, just could not figure it out, and divorces and money and all that stuff. So I started doing a lot of work around that area. Through some contacts that I had, I started working with some dentists and then some orthodontists. And I had a dentist come to me one day and go, okay, Dino, this stuff is working really good in my marriage, but I'm married to like 5 to 10 other girls in my office. Like they all have different communication styles. I have 5 work wives. Can you help me out with this? And I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always understood systems and business. And so I started helping them put systems into their business based around relationships, understanding that, we have nothing in business unless we have strong relationships. And everything I've ever received in my business has come from a relationship. And I know everything I ever will get from my business is through a relationship. Sure. So based on those principles, that's where I really started focusing my world. And that's where I saw a lot of people weren't talking about. And I mean, your audience knows the really sad numbers when it comes to stress and disease, addiction, suicide, divorce in the dental and professional industry. And so I said, I want to answer an area where people are asking questions, but no one's really fixing this. And so
sure,
that's how I got into it.
Yeah. Well, that's that itself, relationship expert. I mean, just focusing on the word relationships. I mean, there's so many different levels of relationships you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Just in an office, you have the patient staff. If you have a patient to staff relationship, you have the doctor to patient relationship, you have the, doctor to staff, each individual staff member relationship too.
And the number one that even you just missed out on that everybody forgets is the doctor relationship.
So
with
in a group practice.
Well, no, with himself.
Okay.
One of the things that I find is the biggest challenge is naturally, because you're a doctor and you're caregivers, you do a really good job of taking care of everybody else, making sure everybody else, I mean, you're a healer, right? That's what your job is
Sure.
to heal people. And I find it not fascinating. I find it disturbing. And one of my big movements in what I do is, look, you cannot give from an empty cup. So you have got to take care of yourself first. You've got to feed yourself first. You've got to find out what makes you tick and what makes you happy. And most doctors are in a situation where they've really kind of denied a lot for themselves, even through school, right? They're usually hard workers. In order to get to dental school, they had to work hard just to get there. They know they're privileged to be there, so they're going to work hard there. Depending on what their specialty is, they're even going to work harder on that. And so they forego a lot of the partying that you do in college. They forego a lot of relationships. They forego a lot of that kind of self-discovery time. And then they get into a practice and it's, you got to give. You're dealing with all these personalities and you often find yourself burned out, stressed out, overwhelmed. It's the reason why it's the number one killer for dentists is stress-related cardiovascular disease. Mm-hmm. So I focus first, the most important relationship. Look, you're not going to have good relationships with your team. You're not going to have a relationship with your patients if you can't know who you are and have a good relationship with yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Well, can you tell us a little bit about a more specific example of how are you able to help, like an office? Let me just throw out something. Let's say a dentist or maybe an office manager finds you at a speaker's at a convention and conference, and they said, "Hey, you'd be great to talk to my dentist or dental owner about how you can specifically help us out." And then you might walk into the dentist's office and find out that he's ready to fire everyone in the office, or he might be just about to call it quits himself. And how can you help out a situation like that?
Well, the first thing I'm always going to look at is what's going on with the culture inside of the practice. So practices and doctors run practices, I found, in three very distinct ways. Either through disdain, where they are living in a world of, this stinks, this isn't my fault, it's, nobody's doing what I asked them to do. And they're always pushing out or grasping out. If you can imagine somebody in a cage, like always attacking somebody. I'm in a cage because of the circumstance and it's their fault. It's my town. It's my, situation of my team members. It's the doctor I learned under, associated under, whatever it is, somebody else's fault. That's somebody who's doing it by disdain. Then you're going to have somebody who's doing it by default, which is somebody who is doing pretty good, but just kind of letting the status quo happen. And I always call it, whenever I hear somebody say, "Oh, things are fine," or "I can't complain," those are key phrases for me to know that somebody's living in a world of just default. And from the outside world, you'd even look at it going, "Hey, they're doing pretty good."
Yeah.
but they know themselves that there's more. They could have more. They want more. They just are either too resigned or too tired or just don't know how to get to that next level. And that next level would be a practice by design, by looking outside into other industries and going, well, what are they doing? Because, change never happens in an industry from inside the industry because everybody's so close to it. So they're looking outside. They're living with purpose and with passion and clarity. And so I'm going to look at the culture there first, because the culture, whatever those one of those three are, runs through the staff and the team there. And so I'm going to look at the culture, and cultures are usually run either by design, good ones, or I also look at it as you will know a culture by who is the strongest personality in the office. And a lot of times that's not the doctor. A lot of times it's the female team members who are I call it emasculating the man, the doctor, because they just do it a certain way and they don't want the doctor to change the way that they're doing stuff. It's when a doctor goes into a practice and maybe he's gone to a seminar and he's learned some new way of doing stuff and he comes back and he's like, hey, I want to implement this. And they're all like, okay. And they do it for a couple of weeks and then it slowly goes back to the same thing again. Sure. And he's like, didn't I ask for this to be done? And it feels like he's repeating himself over and over again. And finally he gives up because he is not the alpha. He's the owner, but he's not the alpha. And so that's the first thing I'm going to look at. And that's all going. And the fastest way I'm going to know how to do that, by the way, is I'm going to ask the doctor, what is your vision? What's your vision for your practice? First of all, yourself, your practice, and the world. And the reason why I'm going to ask that is because we know throughout history, no one ever follows anyone who doesn't have a vision. In my book, I talk about the two extreme examples of Walt Disney and Adolf Hitler. Both of them had two amazing cultures that they created. One terrible, awful, horrible. The other one still lives to this day. Well, they both still live to this day. But both of them changed the world because they had, first of all, they had a huge vision. And the second thing I'm going to look at is what are their expectations? Meaning, what specifically, precisely are they asking from every single team member? And every team member knows that they have to adhere to it. I call them the core values. People have heard about core values. I go a little deeper than what would be a surface level, like business level core value. And then the last thing is, how are they supported? Are you giving them the room to breathe and to be focused on what it is that you want as a vision and letting them get you there, because you can't do it all by yourself. So those are the first three things I look at. And honestly, those three things in my program, I repeat over and over and over again. Because if you have those three things down, everybody will follow you. Yeah. Everybody who is right for you, I should say. And that's what I always see. There's either one of two ways it goes. You change, you demand things for yourself for the good. You're not being a tyrant. You're just saying, this is what I stand for. I have a vision for this in the world. This is what I expect, and this is how I'll support you. One of two things can happen. Number one, people are going to love that. Be like, oh my gosh, finally, we have a leader. We have somebody I can follow. And, oh, I'm excited about that. And they want to join your cause. Sure. Or they'll go, nope, not for me. I'm going to go to the weakest link over here. I'm going to go to the path of least resistance over here where people don't expect stuff from me, and go that way.
Now that's great. So you talked about disdain, design, and then was the third one's a culture.
So disdain, default, or design.
Disdain, default, or design. Okay. The default is when
default is when they're doing okay.
Yeah.
But they use words like, oh, things are fine.
Just fine, yeah.
I can't complain.
Yeah.
What can you expect? Like stuff like that, where even in their body language, my wife and I study body language a lot. And typically people find me first, either I'm speaking somewhere, I come out to their office and I do body language training in a totally different sense of what a lot of people see out there, because it's all question-based. But when I see them doing stuff like that, it's like, it's fine. Total resignation, total resigned to, this is my life. If I can get through 20, 25 years, I can retire well. I don't want to complain. I want to rock the boat. Hey, the girls at least are doing something. Maybe they're not doing what I want them to be doing, but they're doing something. And let me preface by saying I do say girls a lot because 95% of the women in the dental practice workplace, or the people in the dental practice workplace, are women.
Yeah.
But it can apply to men too that work inside there too. And women doctors can be emasculated just as easily as male doctors can too. So,
what about? No, I gave you more of an extreme example of somebody who is, basically just ready to quit or just, calling in for their practice. But what about somebody on the other side where things are going well for them financially? They're doing very well. The practice is thriving, but there's still some major relationship flaws as far as communication, as far as leadership is concerned. How do you address those subjects?
Yeah, great question. And I got to say, honestly, those are the majority of my clients. Like I very rarely have people come to me who are, desperately struggling, barely making it. I have people who are typically pretty successful. They're living in that default area, right? Doing pretty good, but just know there can be more. And maybe dealing with a little bit of stress at home. My wife their wife is frustrated at them because their wives see more in them, but they don't, project that at work. So the first things I'm going to look at is their alpha versus their beta, meaning I believe we need more alpha leaders inside our offices to actually be true leaders, because alpha leaders influence. And so I'm going to look at how are they reacting. I'll give you a perfect example. I was talking to a dentist last Friday, actually. He's somebody I've known for a while. He's out of California. And, we're having this phone conversation. He's been in practice for, 32 years or something. And he's given me this example of a request he made to a team member who's been with him for 20 years. He makes the request. She literally, through his story, tells him, nah, I really don't want to do that. The next day he makes the request again. She's like, you're asking, I don't really think that's necessary. Ask a third day. And on the third day, she finally relents by sending the patient an email. But the first part of the email was, I'm only sending this email because the doctor asked me to do it. Sorry to bother you. Throwing the doctor under the bus. Finally, the fourth day, the doctor says, all right, I'm just going to call the guy. So he calls up the patient. The patient is so grateful that he called and he gets the information he wants. And so my first question to him after this story was, so doctor, why do you accept insubordination in your office? Oh. And he goes, I don't know if I'd call that insubordination. And that's what we all do, right? As soon as we get called on the carpet, we want to defend our actions.
Sure.
And so he's like, I don't know if I'd call it insubordination. I think the insubordination when somebody is, deliberately trying to hurt you or trying to circumvent your success. And I'm like, well, she ignored 3 of your requests. She threw you under the bus. I don't know what you'd call it, but I'd call it that.
Yeah.
The point being is that as we talked more and more and more, he started to see a little bit of the light of, I'm really I am being really beta here. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we think of alpha leadership as the, wife beater t-shirt parading around. I'm the man. You listen to me. And that's not what it is. True alphas and honorable alphas, as I like to call them, they're people who are able to make decisions and hold themselves and hold everybody else accountable to making sure that decision goes through. There are people who are willing to say, this is what I want, and I want to gather people around me to make that happen. I might not know how to make that happen. I probably don't, but I know there's enough smart people that I can get around me to make that happen. Sure. And the last thing that alphas do is they are very good influencers. They know how to tell people what they should think about themselves, about their community, and about the world. And then they also know how to challenge people to be better for themselves and their life. And that's one of the not challenges, but the fun things that I like to do with what I do is when I first get into an office and I'm talking to a team, I'll tell them straight up, look, we're going to talk about your own personal life. We're going to talk about making you a better person. Mm-hmm. And some people really don't like that. They want to come, punch a clock, get a paycheck, go home. And it bothers people. Yeah. But I tell them straightforward, look, if you're not better, how can you expect your patients to be better?
Sure.
And so we show them how to have powerful marriages, how to have powerful communication with their spouse and themselves and their children and themselves. And everything is all encompassing, because I believe it is an integrated system. I believe that balance is a myth. So you have to integrate it somehow. And part of the integration is you work here more hours than you are at home typically. Let's make sure that everything is in integrity with one another. So,
sure. Yeah. Well, that's definitely more of a newer approach than I've seen a lot of business consultants. And would you consider yourself more of as a coach rather than a consultant?
Yeah, people say coach. I use mentor.
Okay.
And the reason being is because I believe coaches typically go out there and say, hey, you should go do this, that, and the other. You think a coach of a baseball, they're in the dugout, they're kind of telling you what to do.
Sure.
And a mentor is somebody who's going to get in there and see what's going on and walk you through it, role play with you, hold you accountable and stuff like that. So I call myself a practice mentor.
Yeah. Mentor. Okay. All right. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about getting very personal with people and asking them to, bring in their baggage and, that, I mean, do you see that resolving a lot better? Have you done it in the past where you weren't so much closely, that wanting to bring in, coworkers and staff members, bringing that much baggage in, and you were just more on the business surface, or just working with the team leader and not working with the staff alone? Did you see the difference between the two?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, in my program, people can choose through either going to where I'm working primarily with the doctor and his what I call core team, 2 or 3 people that are in his team that are his advocates.
Okay.
And working with those people and the whole team together.
Okay.
But here's the thing. I tell everybody, I think it's funny and very interesting you say the word baggage, right? I tell everybody, look, we all got baggage. I got baggage. Sure. Everybody's got baggage. Sure. The only thing I ask in all of my trainings and in all of my situations is, number one, you don't judge it before the behavior change, right? So I was talking to my mom just yesterday about something through 4th of July. And she has lupus, and we were talking about her needing to take more rest and time for herself. And she's like, my brain's always thinking. I said, Mom, you should look into meditation. Meditation is a great way to learn. And automatically she goes, oh, I just can't do that stuff. Well, Mom, don't judge the behavior before the behavior change, right? Sure. Like, of course, we all feel that way. I'm learning how to play the piano right now. I haven't played piano my whole life, and now I'm at 41 years old. I decided to take piano lessons. Guess what? I couldn't take piano lessons or play the piano before I started to play. Yeah. Now I can start. Now 2 years later, I can play, Silent Night. But sure. it's all about learning behavior. But I ask them that, and I say, and be willing to leave your baggage at the door. Meaning, whether it's in a training like this, we do a lot of Skype training, or I'm there live. Okay. Because once you learn the tool, then if you want on your way out of the class, you can pick up that baggage on the way out the door. It'll be there, I promise. Or you can choose, hey, you know what? I learned something different. I'm not going to use that today. So I give people that option, that choice. And like I said, some people are like, no, I need this baggage to live. And some people are like, you know what? This isn't serving me. I want to move on. Sure. But everything, even all business principles, I believe, are about relationships. It's just how you frame it.
Yeah. So you do stay with them a little bit longer than I would, sometimes, consultants come and go. They might be there for 3 months or 6 months. And then, a year later, they call the dentist to find out how they're doing. And then it seems like everything just goes back to where it was before.
Yep. So my programs, I don't have anybody who does less than a year. So it's 12 months. Okay. Because it builds on top of each other. Sure. Even in my book, I was talking to a dentist the other day, and he's like, Dino, your book isn't a quick read. Like, this is a year-long book with all the activities and stuff you do. And that's the point, right? I want people to really get into it, because one of my favorite books is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Have you read that?
Okay. No, I haven't.
Great book. I recommend it for all your watchers and listeners. Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. And the basic consensus is this: nothing we do is by choice. It's all a habit we've created. So if that's true, which I believe it to be true, and so does obviously Charles Duhigg, then we can change that habit. We just have to change certain behaviors. And they're not big, huge shifts. They're little tiny things that make huge cause change later on. So yeah, I think that's the problem is we have the consultants. I mean, I'm pretty bold in my book, and I say it when I'm speaking, do not hire another consultant until you get through this stuff, because if you're not going to change the culture inside your office, and then you're going to bring in somebody who has really powerful, amazing stuff. I love consultants. I think some of them have some just awesome stuff. That if you bring that person in, you're basically wasting your money, because you're trying, and science-wise, you guys are all scientists, right? You're trying to introduce a very new, awesome culture, new thing into a contaminated culture. And every time you do that, you're going to get a contaminated result. Sure. So you have to clean up that culture, know what it is, know who you are, and then introduce the new thing, and it's going to make it even better.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's great. Do you speak at any of the upcoming dental conventions regularly, or do you work more with private clients right now?
A little bit of both. I speak, let's see, like I was just at Dental Town. I spoke there. I got a couple of ortho events that I'm speaking at, Ortho 2 and a few other things, but I am open to speaking. So anybody wants me to come and speak at a association or anything like that, I love that. And I do presentations from, half hour all the way up to, I'm doing a 4-hour training next week in Colorado at an ortho convention.
Just to give I know we're running out of time right now, but I wanted to just give like a quick rundown of, like, let's say a typical client comes to you, and what would be the process of where do you start, and then month 1 versus month 3, and then 12 month. How do you take to the process of that?
Yeah, very great question. It's very simple. It's always the same. There's 4 parts to running an amazing business and having a practice of your dreams. Number 1 is the first quarter, we work on your culture. We dive deep into that, and it's much deeper than just your vision, expectations, support. We really dive into that. The next quarter is your operations, finding out exactly what makes everybody tick, not what you should do from A to B to C, but what makes the operations happen, and how can we make it unique and different to you? And then number 3 quarter is the relationships, focusing on you, your team, and then your patients, and in that order. And then lastly is the expectation, or the excellence. How do we take all this stuff that we learn and go to the next level? Like, be the practice in your industry that people are going like, what are they doing over there? They are rocking it. Sure. And you almost want to make them fearful of, like, wow, they must be doing something illegal, immoral, or fattening, because there's no way they're the same dentist I am, or doing the same thing I am. I tried all that stuff too. You want to make them do that. So that's how we take it to excellence. But it's always a process. It's the same process for everybody. Now everybody's at a different place, right? And we're all individual human beings. So the first thing I do, honestly, is I say, where's the biggest pain in your business that we can get the fastest result to? I have a dentist. I'm going out in Georgia. I'm going out to Georgia tomorrow. He was telling me, he's like, the biggest pain in my business is my relationship with my wife. If I can just be happy there and we can have a great marriage, then I know I can figure this other stuff out. Cool. Sure. That's the first thing we're working on.
Awesome. That's great. Well, yeah, I would love to talk to you more, but I know we're running out of time here.
Yeah, no, anytime.
Lots of great advice here, and I know there's a lot more to it than obviously a 30-minute interview is not going to cover all the topics that I'm sure you can help out dentists with. But I wanted to quickly give you an opportunity to give us your contact information as far as a website, if you have a free offer.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, you can get my book for free. Actually, you go to my website, just dinowatt.com. It's spelled just the way it sounds, Dino, DINOWATT.com. And on there's my book. You can click on there. You can get free book. You just pay for shipping, and we'll send you out a book with some other little extras. With my book, there's over $2,000 worth of video trainings that we add into the book. You just hook up to the link and you can read along and watch along. And I train over and over again, all the different areas. And I do small. I'm not a big, do big events and have a lot of people come to me. I do smaller events. Okay. I'm a big fan of what's called the propreneur. And this is something that I created where I'm trying to help men, especially, be professionals that are entrepreneurs and be proactive in their marriage and proactive in their business as opposed to reactive.
Sure.
And that's the propreneur way, and that's what I do.
Good. Well, I'd love to talk to you sometime in the future, probably in about 3 months or so, and then we can reconnect. I'd like to get into a little bit more of the propreneur program that you have going here.
Yeah.
So, and that's open to more audiences, even outside of the dental field too, right?
Yeah, what's interesting is I do primarily focus just to private practice owners in the dental and ortho world.
Yeah.
I have a client who is a financial planning expert out of Washington, D.C. He found me through my book. We have a what do they call them? Pediatrist, the foot doctors?
Oh, podiatrist.
Right? Podiatrist. I'm pediatrist. I guess that would be a different. And yeah, podiatrist contact me out of somewhere in the South because he found my book. You know, I've been very blessed with the people that have been giving out my books as gifts, people finding it on Amazon. And that's the thing, you know, it's not a moneymaker for me. It's an information so people can actually get this information and really find more out about it. So,
yeah. Thank you so much. Well, Dino, I want to thank you so much for being on the program today. And I know it took a little while for us to connect, but I know you're a busy person. And
no, it's good.
And you know what? That's a good thing. That means you're helping a lot of people out there.
I hope so. That's my goal.
Yeah. Well, and well, go ahead.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on. It's wonderful to chat with you, and what you're doing here, I think, is really important. And I think more and more doctors need this type of community and this type of space to really talk about what's going on, as opposed to everybody just knowing it, but not doing anything about it.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why I started this, in the Facebook group too, because there's also an international audience there too. I mean, I know there's a few people I've interviewed that they have gone outside the country to speak, and they do have clients outside the country, but that's not a very common thing for you to get on an international flight to do things. So Facebook is great because you can connect to people all around the world. But
absolutely, brilliant.
Well, I want to thank you, Dino, and thank everyone for listening and watching the program. And we'll reconnect back in the next podcast.
Awesome. Thanks. Have a good day, everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye. Just